This is basically referring to McQueen's nightmare from the first movie, where in it, McQueen dreams that he's racing with the king and chick, and Frank suddenly appears out of nowhere, where his chick literally dies, and the king just swerves off. Basically, there's not much biggie to it. Chick just dies in McQueen's dream, and the king swerves somewhere. Nothing major. The anatomy of these cars is somewhat of a human-esque machine hybrid, with parts from the cars like exhaust pipes, the engine, and other parts mixed with some of the human organs like tongues, eyes, brains. You know the drill. Basically, it's a lot harder to explain, but this is all you need to know, really. It's just a human carified hybrid. Basically, again, nothing too major. Then the final seconds, McQueen and Mater look up, only to see a balloon of basically heavy metal Mater. Maybe confirming that the story is true, like in almost every episode. Maybe it's referring that Mater turns into this bat thingy. Don't get it, Cars bats, but we never get to hear a mention or reference to this ever again. So again, nothing too major. This is referring again to community service, when after Mater is put into Lightning's body, he says this.
Can't! I always wanted to be a race car.
This is never mentioned again until the episode Salt Flats from Cars on the Road, where Mater says this.
Always wanted to go faster and faster.
But this doesn't really correlate with the race car thing, he just wants to go fast. But still. This has to do with basically the correlation between Cars and Wall-E, where the theory suggests that after the humans made the Earth completely uninhabitable and were brought into the biolaunched jet and were in space, the Cars took over as the people, basically. The theory basically suggests that after the Earth completely became uninhabitable, the Cars took over as the humans, taking on the personality of the last person who drove them, which later became the world of Wall-E. This is a pretty important question in the Cars franchise. How are these cars born? As we know, there exist children cars in this universe, such as Maddie McGear. Well, so basically, the creative director has already confirmed that the cars are actually built, not born. Even though there's a deleted scene where the main antagonist of the film is confirmed to have a mother. But again, it's a deleted scene. It has nothing to do with the car's canon. To back up this theory, we basically have a lot of clues. One, Doc Hudson was built in 1951, and the first ever Piston Cup he won was in 1951. So there's no way Doc could be a baby and win a Piston Cup. Plus, he went on to win the 2 consecutive years after, meaning that, again, a kid cannot, a tiny little car like a kid car, as we know in the Cars universe, can win the Piston Cup, not even qualify. So, yeah, that's basically evidence. We also know that automakers are a thing in this universe. For example, Luigi has literally the Fiat logo on him, so has Sally. This is referring to the fact that we've seen plenty of cars in the Cars franchise die over time, with the most famous one being Doc Hudson, which fans still ponder on what was the cause of his death, with many believing it being, with fans pointing to the options that it could be mechanical or most related to the organs. Since we know for a fact that cars do have organs, they could have had some sort of organ failure and died from that. My theory is that, as we know, the Hudson Hornet is a pretty rare car, selling only more than 43,000 units. But we have to keep in mind that this was in between 1950 and 1957, at the time of the movie, too, since that was when Doc was already dead,
Cars
2011, and already passed a really long time since 1957, being 44 years ago. That's a lot. My theory is basically that since the car was so rare, they had no parts to give him once he was starting to have engine failure or any failure exactly that was related mechanically. As for other common deaths we also know happen in the Cars franchise, we know that the cars also can die from internal combustion or external. What I mean by external is basically when their whole body is literally destroyed, like in Leyland Turbo in his original death scene in Cars 2. And Rod Torque Redline, which suffered from internal combustion after Lemon gave him some all in all, and he was hit with an electromagnetic pulse emitter, or the camera, which made his engine explode. Meaning that death does exist in the Cars universe for these three reasons: unavailability of parts to be replaced, as in the case for Doc, internal combustion, as in the case of Rod Torque Redline, and external destruction of the car body, being Leland Turbo's explanation. We also know that the original death scene for Rod Torque Redline was him drowning, so maybe that's another thing that cars can die from: drowning, meaning that they do have lungs. And since we already mentioned, we do know for a fact that they have organs, so that's also pretty plausible. It's kind of unclear what is or what is not an animal in this franchise. You can assume that motorcycles are animals, since in Cars 3 we see them hanging up like how a human would hang out deer horns. But then we have these tiny Volkswagen Beetles, which are meant to represent these tiny bugs. So it isn't that obvious or that clear. But we also have the tractors, which are also meant to be some sort of representation of cows. So there isn't much we can go off of what is or what isn't an animal, but it's basically anything that isn't considered really a car, like a motorcycle or tractor, but with the only specifications or really exceptions being the Volkswagen Beetle. This is an entry where I researched about and really nothing came up. No creepypasta, nothing in that context. So I can just assume, or this was made pretty prematurely when that thing was still around, the Radar Cars 3, or it simply just doesn't exist and was added as a joke. I don't actually know. In the Cars in Planes universes, we know that wars existed because there exist military planes and military cars. Military cars like Sarge, and even references to the World War and him being a veteran. And as we know, basically the world wars shaped how communism and fascism work. The core idea of communism being the stateless and classless common ownership of the production, with fascism existing due to the discontents and then at the time modern industry and liberalism. So yeah, basically communism and fascism existed since they were the things that world wars basically molded, and since we know they do exist. So basically, it's not too hard to assume that these two political and economical orders existed. Apparently, this is also another joke entry. This rumor happened due to the fact that in the post credit scene of Cars, they were seen in the desert in a not so great shape, being all full of sand, dirt, and some broken parts. So basically, most assumed that after this credit sequence, they continued driving through the desert and eventually end up dying. But this, of course, was debunked in Cars 2 with them being alive and well. This is pretty hard to talk on YouTube. So if you do want to see it, there exists videos recreating what this creepypasta is about, and you can also read it online. But to keep this family friendly, I'm not gonna read it. I couldn't find much on this theory since I believe that basically this could be at the time where the Cars 3 teaser trailer dropped. But basically, what I think this is referring to is the fact that it's assumed that Lightning McQueen died in his crash, and the rest of the whole movie, Cars 3, is basically a whole Mater's tall tale. Since McQueen's crash was arguably one of the most brutal in the franchise, and Mater's stories are the most outlandish, so McQueen surviving this very brutal crash could have been a story just made told by him. And as any theory, this pretty much got debunked. This, of course, would not happen in a Pixar movie, not in a million years. I don't criticize anyone who believes in this theory, but I just don't agree with it. But I respect your opinion. I have no idea what the hell, if it's true or false, or there's any evidence at all to confirm its existence. But of course, since we know that some cars are and planes have belonged in certain parts in history, and Cars 2 confirm that most human things exist in the Cars universe, that's why most people assume that 9/11 happened in the Cars universe. This is exactly how I explained earlier. There exist military planes and military cars, and references to World War II. So basically, we can assume that, yeah, the car world wars are canon. As I said before, the whole Wally and Cars connection and the reason why Cars may be passed in a post-apocalyptic war world is because that in the Pixar theory, basically Cars takes place in a time where again the humans made Earth completely uninhabitable, basically making the cars, and with of course in this Pixar universe be existing a lot of technical advancements, like in Wally, for example, in that spaceship. The cars of course also became more advanced and eventually sentient, meaning that they basically took on the personality of the last human who drove them, or the proper humans gave them they gave them a personality. Once more, of course, military cars and planes, World War II references. So basically, if you don't know what 69 means, I recommend you Google it up. Basically, this is also referring to the fact that cars may be born from, car couples. Since I remember in the scene of Cars 1, we see a car kid, and of course, we already mentioned that car kids being a thing. Plus, in a deleted scene of Cars 3, where the original plot is going to be McQueen suffering from being a victim of identity theft, we get to see that the car criminal who put McQueen in his body, basically has a mother. Basically, this is a deleted scene, so obviously this is not canon. Plus, one of the creative directors already said that cars are manufactured, not born. In short answer, yes, because there literally exists a Pope car and Pope mobile. So basically confirming that religion does exist in this universe. And that's all for this iceberg. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you all in the next one.